This lecture is about imitation, specifically about Millard and Dollard's theory of imitation, and then Bandura's theory, his criticism, and unfortunately we probably arrive at an impasse about how to talk about imitation or how to interpret imitation, but we'll get there. Basically, imitation is seeing somebody do something and you repeating that. There was lots of interest to early psychologists, especially imitation in humans, and their hypothesis was that it was instinctual, that we are born with the ability to imitate. Unfortunately, there was not a lot of evidence for that hypothesis. There was not a lot of support for it. Perhaps some simple imitations like sticking out the tongue, some facial gestures might be imitative or inborn. And remember, we have to differentiate reflexes from imitation. I mean, a basic reflex that we're born with might be grasping a finger or sucking reflex or kicking the toe. What we're talking about is imitation, is observing somebody and then doing it. And again, there's just not a lot of evidence that it is an instinct. It seems to be a learned response. So, behavior analysts interpret imitation as an operant behavior, operant response that we learn. And if we analyze using a three-term contingency analysis, what we see is something pretty straightforward, and that is that the discriminative stimulus is the behavior of some other person. The response is what we're looking at, is imitation, and the reinforcer is probably some generalized, conditioned social reinforcer, like, oh, what a good girl, you look what you did, and so on. And maybe there's some shaping involved. But the view that imitation is just an operant behavior that we learn is pretty straightforward, and it was Dollard and Miller that said that we didn't need to come up with a new form of learning to describe this interesting experience that we see, this interesting event that we see, where people see things and they see other people do them, and then they do them. There was no need to claim that imitation involves a separate form of learning. It was basically operant behavior. Now, Bandura's critique was basically about learning by observation, which is a little bit different than imitation, but it's probably underneath the umbrella of learning by imitation. You see somebody do something and then you do it, learning by observation or imitation. Specifically, he gives examples of things like a child sees a mother get a bowl of cereal and pour milk on it, and then later, and in the next morning, he gets out a bowl, pours himself some cereal, and puts some milk on it and eats it. And where is the SD, is what Bandura was asking in that case. In the morning, when the kid gets out the bowl, pours some cereal in it and the milk, what SD prompted that, what SD occasioned the imitative response? The behavior analytic answer is there was probably no discriminative stimulus at that point in time, but there might have been one. There's no reason to think that there can't be delays in between the elements of an operant chain. But even more so, we can see this as generalized imitation, and that is that a child might learn to brush their teeth. They might spend some time brushing Dolly's hair, or brushing My Little Pony, or brushing Doggy, and this becomes brushing her own hair, or brushing my own hair. We might not have learned, we might not have taught explicitly how to brush someone's hair. We might not have taught someone to brush their own hair, but since they brushed a lot of other things, they learned to brush their own hair. Remember, generalization is behaving similarly in different situations. Brushing your own hair is different than brushing My Little Pony's hair, but it wouldn't be outlandish to think that through generalization we might get some behavior directed toward your own hair if we were directing behavior towards other beings and other things' hair. Bandura is not convinced about generalized imitation. So he's famous for the Bobo doll experiments, which maybe you're convinced by, maybe you're not, with respect to generalized imitation, generalized operant behavior being a good account of imitative responding. So, of course, if we review the experiments of Bandura, he has kids watching videos of people hitting this doll. So they're in a room and they're with this doll, and this is a blow-up toy. It's made of plastic, and in the bottom here is a bunch of sand. It's a weight, so that when you punch the Bobo doll in the nose, it goes down, but then he flips back up, goes down, he flips back up. And kids watch videos of adults hitting a Bobo doll, or they watch video of adults not hitting a Bobo doll. And of course, the kids that watch the video of adults hitting a Bobo doll, if they're given a Bobo doll later, they hit the thing a lot more than the kids that watch videos of adults not hitting a Bobo doll. Again, behavior analysts say this looks like generalized imitation. If you watch adults doing something and you do it later, that seems to be perfectly fine. But I found this on the internet. I thought it was pretty funny. But then Bandura does a series of experiments which he argues are a little bit more difficult for the generalized operant account of imitation. And that is, he has kids watching videos of adults hitting Bobo. You can see in both groups, kids watch videos of adults hitting Bobo. But in one video, the adults that hit Bobo are punished, including there are other adults that come in on the videos and spank these adults. In other videos, the adults that are hitting Bobo are praised. There's an adult that comes in and they say great things to this person, including "You are a strong champion," which I always thought was a funny thing to say. But it was many years ago, and that's, I guess, what you said to people about hitting a Bobo doll. I don't know. It was sort of weird. So Bandura says that if we look at this in a three-term contingency, operant contingency analysis, we have the behavior of some other person being punished, setting the occasion for imitation, which produces reinforcement, or we have the behavior of some other person being reinforced, setting the occasion for imitation, being reinforced. And he says these are identical, that what you should get is equal. You see the behavior of some other person. You see the behavior of some other person is, if imitation is a generalized response, then we should get the same number of hits. But of course, this group hits the doll a lot more. And my contention is that these SDs are not the same. In fact, they're very different. This doesn't mean that there's anything special about this. When you see someone being spanked or see someone being praised, those are different discriminative stimuli that will occasion different responses. There's no doubt in my mind that that's the fact. Bandura, though, comes up with his social learning theory, in which he says that imitative behavior will occur, or the conditions under which imitative behavior occur include attention, retention, motor skills, and expectation. That is, the learner must pay attention, the learner must retain the information, the learner must have the necessary motor skills, and the learner must expect reinforcement. My problem with this, and behavior analysts' problem with this, is that these appeal to processes which are not clearly observable, maybe, or which ones of these are experimental variables and which ones of these are intervening variables. Attention, retention, and motor behavior, or motor processes, I don't know that I have too much of a problem with these if pushed, but I do have a problem with the term expectations. I don't really know what exactly that means, independent of behavior. I think it's a circular concept. Expectations are, it's meant to explain behavior when it really doesn't. So in my view, generalized imitation can account for this. Generalized operant behavior can account for imitation. And I don't think we need additional theorizing. I don't think we have to add these other things and come up with a special form of learning. I agree with Dollard and Miller that we can handle it just fine with a three-term contingency analysis of operant behavior. So, but if you're a social learning theorist and really dig Bandura, then that's fine. I just don't think that adding expectations really simplifies or clarifies what we see.